So those of you that are here in person, those of you that are online, thank you very much for joining us for the Invent to Prevent session this morning. My name is Bob Shear. I'm the Executive Director of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit here in Pittsburgh, and also a lifelong Pittsburgher. So very glad that we're able to host this event again this year. And I'm a member of the steering committee. So thank you again for being here. Just a few quick housekeeping items. We're in the third day of the summit, so most of you probably know this already. But if you do have any questions, there are QR codes to my left and right. Please make sure you utilize those. They'll go directly to the moderator's iPad, and they'll do their best to address those questions throughout the session. So a few other things to note is if you do have any technical questions throughout the session, I will be sitting in the back of the room, so please come back and I will be more than happy to try my best to help you out. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for today's session. His name is Jason Blazakis. He is a professor of practice and director of Center on Terrorism, Extremism, and Counterterrorism from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. So quite a long title. Jason, thank you very much for serving as our moderator this morning.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. Great to see panelists. Good morning. So this panel is titled Invent to Prevent. And it is a competition that students like Jordan, Caitlin, and Emily, and many others have participated in over these last few years. We have champions from the last 3 years here in front of us, and they're going to talk about their innovations in the field of trying to counter extremist behavior. So it's really exciting to be here, to have them on this panel. Invent to Prevent is a program administered by the McCain Institute at Arizona State University, Adventures, and Credence Management Solutions, and it is funded by the Department of Homeland Security. And the end goal of Invent to Prevent is to come up with innovations, products, and initiatives that can help fight the extremist challenge. And today we have Brooke, we have Jordan, Caitlin, and Emily talking about work that they've done in their respective areas of focus: white supremacy, incel extremism, and mis and disinformation. So I think you're going to learn a lot from them. Their innovation and ideas that they're going to talk about are going to wow you. And I am constantly just impressed by the outputs produced by students who compete in this competition. I have been watching this competition for the last 4 years on YouTube, even when I have not had a team in the actual competition, because they are really doing fantastic work. One of the individuals who is the founding father of Invent to Prevent, Tony Scrow, told me about the origin story of Invent to Prevent. And the origin story dates back to, according to Tony, 2014, when someone from the Department of Homeland Security called him up. This person was seconded to the White House. 2014, you remember at this time period, this is at the zenith of ISIS, and the U.S. government was struggling to think of counter narratives to counter ISIS's spread of propaganda. And they reached out to Tony, knowing that Adventures has done a lot of work with students and teachers who are trying to think of new ideas to counter problematic behavior. And that's where the idea of Invent to Prevent was hatched. And when I was talking to Tony in advance of this actual meeting, he gave me this great quote about why are young people, like what you see here in front of you today, involved in this. And his quote is this: young people are like Geiger counters and are often the first to identify violence in their community and the hate landscape. And they identify that in schools and in their communities. And I think what you're going to learn is some personal stories, and also, especially with Jordan, or Brooke, sorry, I keep on calling you Jordan.
I'm Jordan.
Oh, Jordan, sorry. So, Jordan is going to tell you a story that she competed in the competition 2 years, and then they were so impressed with her that they hired her at Adventure. So we're going to start with Jordan because her story is just absolutely fantastic. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason, for that wonderful introduction. I'm honored to introduce you to Invent to Prevent, the program that is an Adventure Partners program in collaboration with the McCain Institute and Credence Management Solutions, as Jason mentioned, sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, or CP3. The Invent to Prevent program is an experiential learning program that encourages both high school and collegiate students to create and activate their own peer-developed products, tools, and initiatives that ultimately encourage other students to become involved in preventing targeted violence and terrorism. A few benefits we've seen from this program include internships, job opportunities, government grants, speaking opportunities, and much more. As for the students currently going through this program, the top 3 teams from both the collegiate and high school programs will be invited to present their initiatives directly to the client and a panel of judges in Washington, D.C. for 5 students and 1 faculty per team. They will also see scholarship opportunities, resume and portfolio experience, letters of recommendation, as well as job references. Students are ultimately tasked with researching a defined target audience, creating a plan, and implementing and analyzing said plan. My name is Jordan Galkowski, and I'm a 2-time former student participant in the Invent to Prevent program, a 2-time winner of the Invent to Prevent program, a scholarship recipient, government grant awardee, and now an Invent to Prevent project manager. In 2021, when I participated on a student team from Missouri State University, my team and I were introducing our program to a classroom full of students. We introduced them to our initiative, the various tactics that we created, our research, and as well as our implemented plan. One student stuck around after this presentation and told us something that we had never thought we would hear before. He told us that he is a former white supremacist. Going through this program and researching this, working on our project, we'd familiarize ourselves with this form of hate, but we never thought that we would see it right in front of our eyes. He told us that this is exactly what he needed whenever he was a white supremacist. He was touched by the ways in which we were able to foster deep connections through conversations. In December of 2020, the Department of Homeland Security identified lone offenders and small groups of domestic violent extremists as the greatest threats to our homeland. This issue that we were focusing on couldn't have been more relevant nationally and within our community. At the time, there were 15 active white supremacist groups in Missouri out of the 19 active known hate groups. We felt that we could make an impact within our community as well as our school by focusing on radicalization to white supremacy. We began our research by familiarizing ourselves with characteristics of white supremacist extremists and risk factors to radicalization. We identified the following as major risk factors contributing to radicalization. The us versus them narrative. This is used by extremist groups to inspire fear of the other. Belonging to the in-group provides a sense of purpose and identity. Personal and political grievances are blamed on the out-group. Digital literacy. Extremist groups utilize social media to push conspiracies and disinformation campaigns. This not only accelerates the radicalization process, but has also contributed to increased accounts of violent and domestic extremism. Finally, bystanders don't know what to do when they encounter these issues online and in real life. They're lacking the knowledge and resources needed to identify radicalization and prevent it within their communities. After identifying the following factors, we dove deeper into our research. Through secondary research, we found that countering bias and othering, misinformation, and knowledge of the radicalization process would be vital for our initiative's success. To learn more, we conducted 10 in-depth interviews with subject matter experts on the topics of bias and othering, misinformation, and radicalization. We were able to learn about how a history of white supremacy within not only our school, but higher education as a whole, directly impacts minority groups within our campus. We were advised on how to advocate for these groups and amplify those voices, specifically at Missouri State University. Digital literacy also played a very important role in how we were able to process and identify information that we see in digital spaces. We learned strategies that individuals can use to enhance their digital literacy and decipher mis and disinformation online. From here, we were able to emphasize the importance of empathy and understanding, creating meaningful conversations, and increasing education around these tough topics. With that in mind, we created 3 goals for our campaign: to counter the us versus them narrative, to inform and empower bystanders, and to prevent the spread of mis and disinformation. With our goals in mind, we created Fuse, to spark connection through conversations. Fuse prevents and protects against radicalization to white supremacy through awareness, education, bystander empowerment, and community support. To accomplish these objectives, Fuse utilizes 3 major tactics: the Fuse podcast, the Fuse card game, and the Fuse toolkit. The Fuse podcast educates our target audience on key topics related to radicalization. We were able to produce 6 episodes that each featured expert guests who shared their knowledge and research and provided action steps for our listeners to engage. The Fuse card game provided a safe space for students to create meaningful connections. 3 levels of this card game gradually led players to impactful connections. This card game fosters self-reflection through thought-provoking questions related to class, religion, race, politics, all the topics that we're typically conditioned not to talk about. Level 1 introduces students with get-to-know-you questions. Level 2 encourages players to share times that they have personally been impacted by othering. And Level 3 allows for players to identify and reflect upon their own biases. The Fuse Toolkit educates on the process, warning signs, and risk factors to radicalization. 5 interactive modules include episodes of the Fuse podcast, carefully curated videos, and related resources from other organizations. Users are able to become Fuse certified by completing all 5 modules. Fuse did not end after the Invent to Prevent competition concluded. We ultimately applied for the Innovation Track grant from the Department of Homeland Security and were awarded. We're currently mass producing our card game to reach a larger target audience, implementing more episodes of the Fuse podcast, as well as hosting the Fuse Toolkit as a training program. As Fuse continues on, I look forward to helping other student teams, leading them to success in the role as project manager at Adventure Partners, and I can't wait to see what our students come up with this fall 2022 semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Fantastic presentation, fantastic work at Missouri State and Adventures as well. I think it's also an example of how this competition lives on, that the work that you're doing is continuing. And last fall, Caitlin Tierney from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies competed in the Event to Prevent competition and was the co-leader of the group that was selected as the winning university. And she's going to talk a little bit about her project that focuses on incel-related violence.
Thanks for that, Jason. So Fuse set a pretty high bar as a project before ours, so we knew we had a challenge in front of us. I just wanted to first off say I'm very humbled to be here. I've learned so much this week, have had the opportunity to meet a lot of the experts that we read their work every day from in person, and I'm really looking forward to all the connections coming out of this summit. So we kicked off our project almost exactly a year ago as part of a Radical Right course at Middlebury Institute. Our first big challenge was to simply decide what form of targeted violence we wanted to innovate to prevent. This blank canvas was by far the biggest challenge of the competition. Once we started discussing some of our passions as well as personal stories, we ultimately landed on gender-based violence, misogyny as a link to violence, and then a deeper interest in the incel movement specifically. From there, we set out to better understand the problem at hand and where may there be moments for actual intervention. We discussed with experts across industries, and after speaking with folks at Moonshot, DHS, gender-based violence researchers, YouTube and Twitter trust and safety team members, we landed on a diversion method. So how we operate, we work to divert men away from misogynistic rabbit holes online and towards healthy community outlets. We do this by researching how hate speech proliferates online and intervening such narratives with targeted advertising and/or user experience design. These diversion tools lead to our vetted partners who provide community and safe relationships. We found through our research that incels congregate almost exclusively online, so why wouldn't we just focus there? Further, as part of our project, we wanted to showcase that this isn't a fringe movement, This rhetoric doesn't just exist in the dark corners of Gab and Telegraph. It's actually simply out in the open on major platforms like the town hall of Twitter. So we decided to focus on Twitter. Our methodology is rather simple, but we've found it to be effective. We do original research with groups like the Meta Lab, which is a data analysis lab at the Middlebury Institute. We work with academic professionals, and we create a robust database as well as a network analysis, including keywords, influencers, different platforms, and now we're expanding into multiple languages. We then use that research to effectively target this audience online. So we use test messaging and conversion methods to send them then to our vetted partners, where we're able to track conversion rates, membership increase, and participation and collaboration with those partners. As part of this competition, a big piece of this was, how are you pushing actual behavioral change? So when thinking about how our method could work, we thought about our theory of change. So we use a knowledge, attitude, behavior change model. Our strategy is to divert men, incel and incel adjacent audiences, away from misogynistic content online and towards community groups through advertising and partnership building. We do this through advertising, our partners, and then post-site. And that behavior and knowledge changes with each step of the way. So first, acknowledging that this exists, an attitude shift and an interest, and then an actual behavior to click forward and explore more. Once with our partner, now they have knowledge of resources are here for me, an attitude of maybe I'm open to one of these resources, and then ultimately the behavior of signing up. And this is where the real change we think happens, is after they've begun to engage with our partner, the knowledge can become, I can change the way I view myself and women. Alternative views do exist. The attitude then becomes, I need to change the way I view myself and women, and ultimately the behavior is, I cope with my feelings in a healthy way and I end engaging in this behavior. Ultimately, the outcome being a reduction of hateful behavior, specifically misogynistic behavior on these platforms, with the impact and really recentering all of this back to why we're doing this work. The impact being there is increased safety for women and consequently safety for men. So we tested this through digital advertising, but we actually think at its fullest potential, the way that this methodology would be effective is within user design of a platform. So here's just one example of how it could come to life on Twitter. Currently, one of the ways that Twitter enforces their policies is by quarantining content. So you can either click to view the content, or you can simply keep scrolling without having ever been exposed to it. We actually think there's a third option that you can implement without having to censor or to remove entirely, but rather giving the user, this audience, an opportunity to reinvent the algorithm that they're inside of. So with this option, they'd be able to explore more. So the content would be quarantined. They could either view it or they could explore other options. These options could include healthy influencers that have feminist points of view but are men, knowing that they are a more convincing group, community groups, or potentially talk therapy and getting the opportunity to actually talk with a psychiatrist or a psychologist one-on-one. So what's next for us? We've been fortunate enough to receive additional funding with DHS, and we're expanding our team. We've hired additional researchers. We're building out our database into Spanish and Swedish language, and then working on partnership outreach to find the right partners to be diverting these men towards, and really understanding what that full conversion funnel looks like.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. And she's being very modest They also have a range of sustainment funding, as does the entire set of folks here who've received sustainment funding from the larger program. Event to Prevent's excellent in trying to continue to nurture innovation. So you've also been a recipient of that, as well as has Jordan and Emily. So Emily, from American University, the last team to compete most recently in the spring of 2022, I was actually in the room able to watch their presentation, focusing on mis and disinformation, and really innovative stuff. Looking forward to your presentation, Emily.
Great, thank you. So my name's Emily Stingle. I'm an undergraduate research assistant at American University's Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab, where I work on developing and using critical comprehension, or DUC as we call it, and we were the spring 2022 winners of the Invent to Prevent competition. So we designed a digital literacy curriculum focused on misinformation, and we have a website that serves as our online hub where we have lesson plans that are broken down by 1st to 4th and then 4th to 6th grade, as well as resources for educators and parents. It's really important to us that we loop everyone in on this conversation. And then kind of the big hitter of our project is a 4.5 animated video about a duck named Daniel. So we have our little blue ducks here. So the video is about Daniel on his first day at a new school. He becomes the subject of some misinformation, and we targeted 2nd and 3rd graders for this lesson. It went over really well. So instead of explaining it, I'm actually going to screen the video because I think it really speaks for itself on what our project is. So I think we'll pull it up.
This is Daniel the duck. It's his first day at a new school.
Good morning, class. We have a new student today. His name is Daniel. He just moved here. Let's all be kind and welcoming to him. Daniel, you can have a seat wherever you'd like.
This seat's taken.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Daniel takes a seat in the back of the classroom alone, while the teacher asks the students to get into pairs for a math lesson. All the students pick partners, but no one lets Daniel join their group. Daniel doesn't know why he is being left out, but works quietly by himself, wondering why his classmates don't want to work with him. During gym class, all of the other animals are hanging out. Daniel tries to join in the conversation, but the others won't include him and move away from him. Daniel feels very left out and starts to cry. He decides to go read a book alone instead. While he is reading, Susie the swan comes over to talk to Daniel.
Hey, Daniel. I'm sorry we didn't include you.
Why didn't they want to talk to me? I don't understand.
Well, you're a duck.
What do you mean?
Everyone knows ducks are dumb. Bear told me that if we talked to you, we'd become dumb too. What are you reading?
It's an advanced physics book for college students. I already finished the high school ones.
Wait, you're smart? Huh, that means everyone was wrong about you. Let me go tell the others.
Why were you talking to Daniel? You know you'll become dumb if you're near him.
That's not true. Where did you even hear that?
Well, I was watching a video online the other day, and it said that we all need to stay away from ducks because out of all the animals, they are the dumbest. And if you get near them, it will rub off on you, and you won't be smart either.
I looked it up too. At ducksardumb.com, it says the same thing.
Well, it's not true. Daniel is actually really smart, but now he feels left out.
The teacher overhears the students talking and decides to gather everyone around for a conversation.
Everyone listen up. I heard that there is some misinformation spreading about our new student.
Wait, what's misinformation?
Misinformation is information that you hear from others or read online that is not true. It can cause others to make harmful decisions, like excluding Daniel and spreading false information to everyone in the class. You shouldn't believe everything that you hear or read online, and always double-check your sources to make sure they are reliable before assuming something is true. Daniel's feelings were really hurt today, and even though that was not your intention, the impact of spreading misinformation caused a lot of problems. Next time, make sure what you are saying is true by checking real sources or asking an adult, and also getting to know Daniel before assuming things about him.
Daniel, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that I was spreading misinformation. And from now on, I will be much more careful about believing what I see online.
I'm really sorry too, Daniel. We were wrong, and we should not have excluded you. Do you want to come hang out with us? Daniel forgives his classmates. They all hang out together and eventually become friends. All of the animals learned an important lesson from Daniel's first day, and now know not to believe everything they see online, especially if it is not from a credible source. They learned that spreading misinformation can cause harm. So from this day forward, they make sure to check their sources and not assume things about others until they get to know them.
So that video is part of a larger Daniel's First Day digital literacy lesson. So we have a PowerPoint and then a worksheet for students. It's about a 45-minute lesson in total. And we're teaching themes about confirmation bias. We actually show the difference between if you Google ducks are dumb versus ducks are smart, or if you're Googling it as a question, are ducks dumb, are ducks smart, different results every time. So we're introducing those ideas to students. And our project is also longitudinal, so this is the youngest lesson that we've designed, but we also have lessons for older students to build on the themes that we've already started introducing in Daniel's First Day. So where we are at right now is working on expanding our video library, dubbing the video in different languages. We want to add more lesson plans, so looking for more funding. Hopefully we'll be joining the CP3 team in about a year. So we're excited to see where we go. We're a little baby project right now, but we're really excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. American University really innovating, and I'm going to quack down on the audience because I have no questions from you yet. So please do the QR code, send some questions to our amazing panelists. I have the first question, and I'm going to ask this of all of you, starting Emily to Caitlin and then to Jordan. And I think there probably are a lot of people also watching online and people thinking about, perhaps entering this competition. And you both, all of you have been champions, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I personally observed that with Caitlin's team. There are moments where you may have doubt. Are we in the right direction? Should we be doing something else? What would you say are some of the top lessons learned from your experience in competing in the competition that you would want to alert future competitors to as they think about competing, developing an idea, a program, a tool, or initiative as they move forward in an event to prevent competition? And I'll say also, we're talking sort of here at the university level, but also there is a competition at the high school level as well. And I think that is a fantastic advancement, a really recent advancement that happened this year. So Emily, any words of wisdom you would pass on to others?
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about Invent to Prevent is that it takes that generational aspect. So the reason why, and Jordan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that Invent to Prevent hits hard on is that DHS is a client who wants college students to come up with something that they might not be able to come up with on their own. So the advice I would give would be to really tap in, for future students, to really tap into your identities and your lived experiences, and the issues that are present in your own communities, and use that to create something that's important to you and that can then have a powerful impact in your community. So we kept circling back to what can we come up with as students who have mostly grown up with technology. Duck was an entirely undergraduate team, so we're average age of about 20, so most of us had personal devices by the time we were in elementary school or middle school, so we have a unique perspective on what the issues are with young students. So really tap into thinking about what's around you, what are your experiences that maybe somebody else who's been in the field for a while isn't going to come up with, because there's so much potential for what you can do if you're thinking through the lens of where you're at in your life right now.
Awesome, that's great advice. Caitlin, your thoughts?
I would definitely +1 that. Follow your passion, and I think it really is a huge driving force for how your team will come together collectively. I think I would just also add that, and something I've learned definitely this week are that practitioners in this space want to foster innovation. So reaching out to experts, reaching out to authors of pieces that have inspired your work, to tech companies, to artists who want to help your mission. There's a world of people who want to support, so I would just encourage students to not be afraid to send that email or that LinkedIn message of someone they really admire and see how they can help drive their project along.
Awesome, thank you, Caitlin. Jordan, your thoughts?
Building upon that, there's not much to say after that. I would say, to build on that, connecting with existing community resources that, you might not be in touch with, but a lot of these community resources, as Caitlin mentioned, in the practitioner space, are working towards these issues, and they're not necessarily working towards these issues with the younger audience quite yet, so that unique perspective that both high school and collegiate students have on that organization is they can partner with them and grow together with them, and they are looking for these projects. So I would definitely say looking into your local community and seeing what they're already doing and how you can build upon that, as well as engaging with your creative side and just thinking outside of the box in terms of these issues, mainly again to be engaging with those individuals such as ourselves in this younger generation, but to also be relatable and have this content developed in a understandable format, because all of us today have somewhat of an understanding of what we're speaking about here, but that's not the same case for the large majority of our audience. So that would be my answer.
I love those answers, taking the local community, narrow, focused approach in the context of your idea, the idea of not being afraid to engage with experts in the field who are well established, the idea of pursuing your passion. I think these are all fantastic pieces of advice. So since I asked that question, the audience has been very eager now, and we have 5 questions and counting. And I'm going to start with the most recent one that came in, because I think it's midway through, a really interesting question. Please share more about how you identified your target audience to ensure that you are not ostracizing them. And I think this is a really good question for all of the communities you all have focused on. This idea, for instance, of alienating, a community of individuals that you're focusing on Fuse or diverting hate or duck. So I'm going to start going backwards now to Jordan to take that question on. Like, how are you thinking about your audience, and how did you think about not ostracizing them?
So with Fuse, our target audience was college-age individuals, similar to my team and I. With that being said, and kind of in relation to my previous answer, was that we connected with local community resources, and we were able to learn how to advocate for and amplify those certain voices, not only within our school, but within our community in general. So I would say that by connecting with those individuals and learning their experiences and how they were able to connect with college, university-age students was really impactful for our campaign.
All right, thank you. Caitlin.
So our project's entirely online and a bit of a larger scope of how that audience fits a profile, but we used a network analysis around a set of known Intel adjacent accounts, so we were able to narrow our focus. And we know that as part of Intel ideology and rhetoric, isolation and feeling isolated is one of their main attitudes. So we try to use language of inclusion and you're not alone in our message testing. And as we continue to run some of these messages, we have some really interesting partners in our corner when it comes to AI and how believable a message may be against an audience. So that's one of our next steps, is kind of pressure testing what that right message might be.
All right. And Emily, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll say there's a reason why we chose ducks and animated animals. We intentionally didn't do people so as to not ostracize a certain group, but also our audience is young and we really wanted to foster compassion and critical thinking. So that's why in our lessons, if you look at them specifically, we're not saying don't do this. We're saying this is what you should be doing and how to act online in a way that's going to benefit you and benefit those around you. So I also think little kids they're really fun to work with. They learn really fast, and none of them took this as something that they didn't know what misinformation was prior. So it's something entirely new, but we're really taking it as they don't know, so there's so much potential, and we're really hitting it from the compassion side of things.
And I think that's really important because there's a question from the audience that asks you to weigh in on misinformation and how it's become a tool to weaponize facts and lead to polarization. And I think the way in which you all handled the video using animals is a great way to ensure that that kind of ostracization, that kind of polarization, that discussion around misinformation can often contribute to was avoided. So I think you all did an excellent job on that. And at the same time, you've kind of answered a question from the audience as well. I think that's really important work to do that because these things can be manipulated. And this is why I think the first question came in regarding ostracizing people. And I think you are very mindful of that. And I think the judges, as they evaluated your ideas, were thinking about that as well. It weighs heavily on them. This is a really good question. What did you find most rewarding about developing your own products and tools for this field? So let's start with Emily and work our way back down on that.
Yeah, I'll maybe take this as a time to highlight some of our data. So it was really exciting working with kids. We're in DC, which kind of poses a unique challenge as far as getting into schools. DC public schools are pretty hard to get into, so we ended up doing virtual lessons in the district that I went to as a kid. But we knew that 10% of students had heard of misinformation prior to the lesson, and 90% of them said they understood the term afterwards. 62% of them thought that it was something harmful, and 100% of them could identify that it was something harmful after the lesson. So it was 45 minutes, and seeing how excited kids were, my favorite question was, did you enjoy the video? And some of them were shooting up 2 arms because they were so excited about it. So that was really rewarding to see that we can make an impact really young. And also it was kind of eye-opening, and I think especially for the prevention field as well, as how young you can be having these conversations. I mean, misinformation is a 5-syllable word, and we had second graders understanding it. So it's amazing how young and how smart kids are that they can understand terms like this. We chose a basic definition of misinformation intentionally because we can really build on that and add more, especially as more research comes out about it. But it's so rewarding to see just how intelligent kids are and how they're so eager to learn about how they can be safe and smart online. So.
Vitally important work, starting at a really early age as well, and thinking through some of the things we heard over the course of this last week, this idea of enduring solutions and starting at a really young age in terms of preventing the possibility of individuals going down those rabbit holes is so important. And I think the DUC program really addresses that adroitly. Caitlin, your thoughts?
I think for me, what's exciting is when you have an idea with legs, you want to keep talking about it. So our team will just brainstorm forever. I have some of my team members here today, and they can attest that a 1-hour meeting never seems long enough. And just the people who are working in this space right now to help solve some of these problems are really excited to talk about all the different angles we can take to solve them. So I think it's just been really a rewarding thing to be a part of something that every person I've discussed it with wants to hear more about and wants to see how they can help be part of the solution.
That's awesome. This passion that your team has exuded, I've been able to watch in the margins of the meeting and the engagements that you all had and the interest from experts in the field and the work that you're doing. It really does shine through. Jordan, your thinking on this?
I would say the most impactful piece of our project was definitely the direct impact that we had within our target audience. Working as a student organization, we expose ourselves to a lot of students, specifically on Missouri State University campus. And the story that I shared with you today about the former white supremacist coming to us and saying that this is exactly what he needed when he was in that space and didn't necessarily feel comfortable breaking out, that would be the most impactful thing coming out of Fuse for me, and also connecting with the local community resources that we were able to ultimately establish that connection with, and just kind of amplify their efforts in that field was huge, especially because they were doing the right work, but they didn't have the correct vehicle to bring those ideas and actions to life. So by partnering with those organizations and giving light to that, it was very impactful for students.
And there are so many questions coming in now, and some really good questions. And I'm going to direct this question to Jordan, because Jordan's participated in the program as a student multiple times and now works at Adventures. And I think you're well positioned to answer this question. It's kind of like a Adventures, those who put on the actual competition type of question. Can you tell us how many competitors there generally are each semester, and some information about what's happened at schools where students had good ideas but didn't win?
That's a great
It's hard
question.
to ask the students who've won that question, but Jordan's kind of inside the machine watching how everything's made. So I think she's really well equipped to answer that one.
So as for participants, it varies from semester to semester. This semester in particular, we have 25 participating universities, 35 participating high schools, growing number from there. As for the students that come up with these fantastic ideas and don't necessarily get pushed through, which I know we'll talk about in our deliverable session, but it is very disheartening to see that. But these students are so excited about the impact that they made within their school and within their community that they want to continue these on. Most of the time they don't necessarily know how to, so we try to connect them with the existing resources that do happen for them in that space. So a lot of the times these students will present their ideas. They're so excited about this program, the tactics that they're focusing on, and the topics that they're tackling. And they do continue those programs. A lot of the schools that we work with have systems in place to where they can connect them with maybe it's local businesses, maybe it's mental health resources, so on and so forth, so that they can sustain these programs. And that's another reason why we have our partnerships with DHS, McCain Institute, Credence, so that we can sustain these programs to a larger level.
I think that's a good segue to this next question, actually, in terms of partnerships and sponsors. There's a question from the audience is, what was the most important aspect of the support that you all have received from sponsors and mentors, so faculty, staff at your universities, and how can you all help young researchers and practitioners as well moving forward? So let's start with Emily on this question and then work our way this way.
Yeah, I think we had so much support to begin with. DC is a really supportive community for stuff like this, as well as our professors, Dr. Cynthia Miller-Idris, who was amazing and who was constantly encouraging us and gave us a great overview of the field and kind of where the gaps are, and where it was really encouraging us to use that generational perspective of what can we come up with. And so I think we're really hoping to mentor another team next semester in the spring, encouraging others to participate, thinking of how we can expand the program. I know I love the idea of thinking of mentorship, how can we mentor other researchers, hopefully expanding our team at some point, letting other people hop on and mentoring them, involving them. Yeah, we've had so much support from McCain Institute as well. They've been amazing. We're doing sustainment through them, and they've been partnered with all of us throughout our projects. So I think we're really fortunate in the way that, and DHS as well. So everybody's just been really engaged with what we've all been creating.
Awesome. Caitlin.
I guess just building off of what I said previously, when you have an idea people want to talk about, they want to help you. So, I mean, you as our advisor, Jason, has been incredibly helpful just connecting with different people in the field, having conversations with a lot of people who are doing this research already, many of whom we've got to meet face-to-face for the first time here this week. Connecting with people in our own personal networks as well who want to help us expand our idea and our mission. And I guess I would just add to that how we can help moving forward is by handing over examples of what we've already done. So I think one thing that helped our team a lot was seeing what Fuse had put together and kind of the standard of something that would actually be impactful. And then using that as a runway. And then one thing that we've discussed as a group is helping current students apply for funding like we all have now. It's very overwhelming to sit down with a NOFO and be like, how does this come together?
And NOFO's Notice of Funding Opportunity.
Yes.
So Caitlin's already got the bureaucratic speak
I already got
down.
the acronyms down, yes. Now I'm well versed, but it was only really to the guidance and help with our mentors at McCain. Big shout out to McCain, who've really helped guide us through this journey. But yeah, we want to help students apply for the funding. It's out there. It's very heartening and encouraging to see government invest in these types of projects. So we want to help other students get those dollars as well so they can keep pursuing their ideas.
Yeah, pay it forward. Jordan.
I would also piggyback off of that in terms of creating a network of individuals who have been through this process and who know, the direction of the program, the scope of the program and its objectives, and again, piggybacking off of their work and their support since we've already been through the program, been through the funding processes and so on and so forth. So just connecting with those individuals, we would love to see something along the lines of a generalized network of people, again, who have been through that. And then touching on the support, being from a university that has, a lot of those connections within, I went to school at Missouri State University in Springfield, Missouri, and a lot of people hear Springfield and they think Simpsons. But we had a lot of resources within our school and community that we were able to use and piggyback off of their resources. So that was a huge part of our program, and it can be a huge part of other individuals' programs as well, because like I mentioned, those programs are out there. Like Caitlin mentioned, they're looking for funding, they're looking to give funding and to support those efforts and needs and various causes. So.
Awesome. This one question is very specific to you, Emily, but I'm just gonna add a component to it so both Caitlin and Jordan can speak to this as well. And I think it speaks to the issue of scalability, specifically on your project. I think this is a great question, but I want both of you to think about how you would scale your projects in an ideal world. As school personnel, so someone's asking from probably the university or high school level, we often encounter parents, so probably talking elementary or high school, who believe that there's a spread of misinformation. Have you thought about targeting parents to help raise awareness in understanding and support learning at home? So I guess that's kind of a scalability question.
Yeah, so we already have a parent letter drafted. We've kind of been revising it as we encounter. We just continue our project. So the parent letter is explaining what we do, why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to approach misinformation as something non-politicized, but we're also aware it's a highly political term that's probably just going to continue to happen. It's probably going to get worse. But we have a parent guide on our website that we're in the process of revising and adding to. It's really important to us that we loop parents in on the conversation, because if kids are learning about this in school, they're probably going to go home and talk to parents about it. And if parents are maybe countering what we're telling them in schools, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So we're working on making this something that's team-oriented. It takes a village, so that's including parents and that's including teachers.
Awesome. And Caitlin, how would you scale up in an ideal world?
There's endless scalability for trying to off-ramp incels on the internet. And misogyny in general, just studying how misogyny proliferates online. Right now, the ways that we're scaling are studying other languages as well as other platforms. What I'm really excited about are starting to really work closely with some of these partnerships and learning more from men's community groups of how they foster healthy, safe relationships among men, and what we can learn from them as we try to off-ramp these individuals away from finding these dangerous communities and towards these healthier communities.
Awesome. And with Fuse, Jordan, if you had unlimited resources, where could Fuse go?
If I had unlimited resources, oh man. Essentially right now with the funding that we have, Fuse is mass producing the card game to reach a larger target audience, so not necessarily just university students, creating various packs that parents can be involved, younger children can be involved, the whole community as a majority. So definitely expanding off of that and then expanding our resources that we have too. So not just specifically within Springfield, Missouri, but also branching out to various universities in Missouri and beyond. So that's definitely where we would go with that. And also producing more episodes of our podcast that include experts who can share their knowledge and expertise in those specific fields, and also provide specific action steps for listeners to generally engage with your program and be able to spot the signs of radicalization within their communities too.
Awesome. So we're down to about the last 5 minutes, but we start a little late. So and there's not a group following us in this room afterwards. So I have one last question before we talk about deliverables, which is so important to the organizers of this summit. And it's this. What is something you would have done different in the context of your projects if you had that opportunity? So Jordan, I'm going to start with you and then go to Caitlin then Emily.
Something that I would have had done different, participating in this team, we're a very strong team of 8 students, and we decided to focus on 8 different tactics. So I would say narrowing down our focus in terms of that, we mainly focus on our card game, our toolkit, and our podcast, but we also had, guerrilla marketing, where we created this huge house of cards and posted it all over campus, and various tactics related to that. So I think that if we honed in all of our resources on our 3 major tactics, instead of keeping it broad, then that would have definitely been more beneficial to our campaign. And then again, just diving deeper into our research and reaching out to even more organizations that we could essentially partner with, who could amplify our voices would have been more beneficial there.
Yeah, that's a lot to take on with a student group of 8. Mm-hmm. So narrowing down
while
the scope.
in grad school,
yeah,
having other classes.
That's a lot. Caitlin?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we already kind of bit off a little bit more than we could chew as well. So I don't know if we would do anything more than we did with the allotted time that we had. I think that, I think something that we could have maybe tried to do a little bit differently were really focus in on at least 1 or 2 more message testing campaigns that we could pull that information from and kind of be able to build off a little bit more. Again, it was a very short amount of time, and we were all remote. So those challenges, I think, were hard to overcome, but we still resulted in an interesting project. I think just trying to do a few more tests would have helped us understand the problem a little bit better. And then just also making sure everyone felt engaged. We had a team of about 15, and with being all remote, I think any student who's been a student since March 2020 knows how challenging that is.
Yeah.
And then when you're thrown into a group project for your entire grade while you're also balancing a bunch of other stuff, just finding a way to make sure everyone was engaged. I think as a leader of the project, that was probably an area I could have maybe focused a little bit more on and made sure everyone felt like they had a place.
Yeah, a lot tied into a grade. She got A+, by the way. So, if you think about, they are coming up with their idea in September and they're delivering in December. So what you saw here today is essentially for all of our panelists is being created in 3 months, which to me is extraordinary, extraordinarily difficult and really impressive what you all have done. Emily, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think more pre-research, it was a really fast turnaround, and we also had the first month of our semester was entirely virtual. So we did this on a really tight timeline, and I think something we could have benefited from was kind of testing our group first to understand more of what the specific issue was. In a sense, our whole project was kind of a gamble because we created this video and we could have tested it, and then it could have happened where the kids just didn't understand misinformation. That was a potential. And now we're part of Peril, so we're working with their research associates, or yeah, they're helping us out with more of that as we continue to sustain and scale our project. But we probably could have gone and tried to get into schools early and surveyed students. It's something that could have been easy to do, would have given us a better idea as we went into it.
Awesome. So the organizers of the conference, especially Laura Ellsworth, really wants us to focus on deliverables, concrete things that we can achieve in the wake of this summit and in the wake of this panel, and would love to hear your thoughts, the 3 of you, about what's the next innovation within Invent to Prevent in that construct, or more generally, experiential learning that you think could help the field move forward in the context of countering extremism. So I'm going to throw that out. I don't know, Jordan, Caitlin, Emily, who wants to take that first?
I can take it first. We've kind of touched a little bit on it already with building on a network of alumni who can be mentors to students in this program and moving forward. Just adding on to that, having a library of former grant applications so students can go and see real examples and they're not starting from scratch. They can actually see ways in which students like them have applied for significant funding and what was required of that, and then just being open to hopping on Zoom calls, responding to emails for students, and just making sure that the future of the program knows that they have a lot of people in their corner.
Yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah, I would piggyback off that and just say that creating an alumni network in which students can share their, ideas, opinions, previous feedback would be beneficial for the students coming into this, especially if they have absolutely no prior experience to this whatsoever. So I think that creating that strong network of connections and engaging students with these opportunities would be huge for student success moving forward.
Emily, add on your side?
Yeah, just really encouraging mentorship, and not just in the context of Invent to Prevent, but just in colleges. As people work on projects, I think students are constantly coming up with new clubs or activities, so encouraging them to work with each other, to collaborate. That's something that I think Invent to Prevent could really do. If a future group is working on something like media literacy or misinformation, come talk to us. We'd love to work with you and mentor you a little bit, learn about what you're doing, and potentially collaborate if their project, takes off.
And various funding as well. I didn't mean to cut you off, but this competition is very competitive with the top 3 teams out of, I just mentioned, 25 collegiate and 35 high school. So increasing the various funding for those students who don't necessarily get to attend that competition or who don't necessarily get a DHS grant or funding from their university or the McCain Institute. So that would really encourage students to continue on with these programs. The students who are incredibly passionate about that but don't have those opportunities ultimately fall short of that. So by increasing funding around these opportunities, it would encourage students to continue on with the great work that they've already been completing.
Yeah, I personally would love to see the college and university teams mentor and perhaps team up and work with the high school teams at some point too, because I think that really could lead to great collaboration and innovation and mentorship as well. So we are over time. I would just love to clap for the panel. Amazing work. Thank you for your excellent questions, audience, and enjoy the rest of the summit.